Welcome to another inspiring episode of Podcast with Sheila, the podcast that is spreading positivity around the world by sharing inspiring life experiences. With me today is Sarah Intelligator, a divorce attorney with over 20 years of experience. She is a speaker, the author of the book Live, Laugh, Find True Love. She's here to share why relationships fail, how to recognize when you are settling, and what it really takes to build a love that lasts. As usual, we aim to educate, motivate, and inspire you. So grab your warm drinks and let's hit the ball rolling. Hello, Sarah, and welcome to Podcast with Sheila.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm excited for us to be talking about this today. It seems recently the platform has been attracting guests who are experienced in relationships, divorce, marriage. So I'm excited because it looks like a continuous topic,
Oh,
which has
good.
not been planned, yes, but it looks like that. So then I'm beginning to think this topic is becoming one of a concern where people are beginning to experience a lot of these issues. So I'm excited we are throwing a lot more light on it on this platform.
Good.
Um, yeah. So let's hit right into it. As a divorce attorney with over 20 years of experience, what has surprised you most about why relationships fail?
Surprised me, maybe not so much is the word, as the most prevalent reason that I see relationships fail is that people don't really share fundamental values when they go into the relationship. And so consequently, as the relationship plays out and they have to navigate life together, and especially when children come into the picture, they don't seek to navigate life in a similar way because they don't fundamentally value the same thing. Their goals aren't aligned, and so they end up drifting apart.
Do you think that this is something that is overlooked at the fundamental stages of a relationship because people are in love? They tend to overlook some of the quote
Yeah.
and unquote red flags or whatever it is. And
Mhm.
then later on in the relationship, some of these things pop up and then you don't know how to handle it.
Yeah, 100%. People go into relationships based on um feelings, like, like, oh, that person's so attractive, or we have such a good time when we're together, or that person is so, good looking, and whatever it might, or we have things, so many things in common, but they're like superficial, surface level things, and they don't dig deeper or prioritize really true, like, morality and like fundamental values. So they're not looking at it critically, they're really relying on their emotions to select a partner. And yes, in the beginning it's all fun and exciting, but ultimately it as it progresses, and that excitement fades away, the reality sets in, and the glue that's needed to hold the relationship together just simply isn't
Wow, it's getting interesting here because you've mentioned morality. I'd like us to hone in on the. It wasn't part of my questions, but that came up, and it looks like there is a blur line between morals or what is accepted now or what the right thing to do in a relationship and what's not right. Because what I see these days is people are beginning to do things that are not right, but society is beginning to accept things that aren't right as
there.
just brush over it. It's nothing. Just get over it. Things like recently people, there are no boundaries in relationships anymore. The man can go out and have multiple women, be with them and all of that. I think it's okay. Likewise, some women can go out and have multiple men and think it's okay. So
Hmm.
morals have really been blurred. And some of these things are beginning to affect the relationship. And people don't care how the other person feels. This is what I want to do. So I'm doing it. Whether my partner is going to be okay with it or not, it looks as if people don't care. And it's beginning to become the norm. Oh, a man can have multiple, and all of these things don't seem to be right. And women are saying, if a man can have multiple, why can't I have multiples then? because the money, some of these things and some of these languages that didn't used to be. I remember growing up, my parents married till my father died. There was no divorce. I grew up with my parents together in the house. And I saw the way they came together as married couples, where that is not, they had their own issues, they handled it beautifully, it wouldn't become chaotic in the house. But you don't see that these days. And people marry today and tomorrow they are divorcing. Can we draw emphasis on some of the things we've taken for granted as people that is gradually affecting marriages, relationships of today?
Yeah, I think morality and all of that. I mean, I think that's very deeply personal. Each person has a different moral compass and bar and all of that. But um, I think the erosion of marriages and the institution of marriage, people just have a more um, kind of carefree attitude toward it than they did back in the day. Whereas, like, back in the 1950s or 60s, when our parents got married, that was that people just got married and that they knew that they were going to stay married. And in some cases, um, that necessarily wasn't the right thing. Like, that kept women trapped in maybe abusive relationships or things like that. So there is some, you know, I think there is some validity to divorce being an option, but I do think that nowadays people go into it relying too heavily on the fact that divorce is always a backup plan. Like that, when you know that divorce is no longer taboo and it's totally fine, and like, oh, if it doesn't work out, we can get divorced. Nobody really goes into marriage thinking they're going to get divorced or wanting to get divorced. But like, there is always this, it's your parachute, right? You can always pull the string and jump out at any time, and there's not this taboo around it that there used to be back in our parents' generation so much, or grandparents' generation. So I think that, and it's for a lot of reasons. I think, a lot of people are now, the divorce rates are going down because a lot of people are actually choosing not to get married anymore. So, the kind of people have the younger generations especially have a very different view of marriage altogether and the institution of it, to the point where they're shying away from it, and that commitment. So I think it's really complex, actually.
Do you think that the younger generation, just because you've mentioned it, the younger generation are not attracted to marriage because of what has been exhibited to them in their homes, because of the things they've seen their parents go through? So marriage is not attractive anymore.
Probably to an extent. And then I think that the younger generation in general is sort of rejecting like traditional value systems and sort of marching to the beat of their own drum. They're like, oh, I don't need marriage to commit to a partner. Like, they're just kind of non committal in general. I think like Gen Z is more non committal. My observation, they're more like, let's find a cause and rally around it. Like, they're not into these, what they consider like outdated institutions, maybe like marriage or, you know.
There's more I want to ask, but I don't want to say. And there are consequences to this, and there, because I
Yeah,
believe that, yeah.
the
Um,
birth rates are going down. I mean, there are countries where people are like, there are countries, whole countries, that are actually concerned with the dropping birth rates, because fewer people are having children, and like a number of children being born is lower than the number of people dying out. So, there are concerns over population, which is funny because we used to have the opposite concern about like overpopulation. So it's interesting.
wow, this is interesting. Your book, Live, Laugh, Find True Love, works backwards, looking at why relationships end to help people fight the right one, to help people find the right one. Can you share how this approach came about?
Yeah, so I'm a divorce attorney in Los Angeles. Uh, I see people go through really painful experiences every day. I watch their children go through these painful experiences, and really suffer. And I wanted to stop that. Like, if I could prevent that from happening, even for one person, then I wanted to do that. So basically, I look at why relationships in the book, I look at why relationships fail. I see people, I've been doing this for almost 20 years, people coming into my office. I see over and over again the same patterns. Why are these relationships failing? And so I decided, okay, well, if I could warn people about why relationships fail, these are the patterns. And then this is what you need to do to actually find a meaningful relationship, to make your relationship work so you don't end up in my office. Then that's kind of how it came about.
I'll be excited to know more about why relationships fail, because in all of it, like I always said, and I said in the previous podcast and the one before that, um, divorce is not a good thing. It's not a pleasant thing, and most of the time it affects the children.
Yeah.
And that, for me, that is my greatest concern: the children.
Same.
Yeah, as because when the two people decided to have a child, the child didn't ask to be born. And in that case, the child needs all the care. And it's easier for the child to get all the care when the mom and the dad are together in the family. So, too much of the divorce going on, well, like you said earlier on, that if it's abusive and all, don't stay in it. I totally agree with that, with your mental health. And I work with women. Some of these problems come up a lot. So this topic in particular is very dear to me, as I meet a lot of women all the time, and the kind of things they go in. Beautiful women who had bright futures before them and had to go through a broken relationship and couldn't deal with it very well, and it's affected their whole life, their outlook, their personality, their appearance. Everything has been impacted. And so I'm excited we're talking about this, and I'll be very excited for us to throw more light on some of the things that will cause this. So you coined the term holistic divorce and family law. What does that mean? And how does it set your work apart?
So I was a yoga teacher for close to 20 years. I My practice of law overlapped with my teaching of yoga. I don't teach anymore, but um, I when I went out onto my own, I left a firm that I was working for, and I went out to practice on my own. And I decided, I needed to figure out what set me apart from all the many, many family law lawyers that are in Los Angeles. So I thought about, what made me different. And it was obviously that I had been teaching yoga for so long, and that very much informed my style of practice of law too. It was like, I want to make sure that I'm looking at the whole person and the whole situation, and not just focusing on, like, fighting and arguing and billable hours. Like, this person has children. I'm dealing with real people, and all their money and all of their property and everything that they've worked their whole lives for, and their kids. So I really have to take care of the human being in the process, in the divorce process. So that's kind of how I coined the term holistic divorce and family law.
Wow. You talk about the F words of successful relationships: fundamental values, fear, foundation, fixing family, and fairy tale. Can you walk us through these?
Yeah, so we talked about fundamental values already, essentially, but foundation is another one. So this is like, these are the F words. These are like the fail factors that I've identified. These are the patterns that exist in virtually every relationship that ultimately fails. So you want to avoid these fail factors, essentially these F words. So the next one after fundamental values is foundation. So a foundation, I liken it to the foundation of a house. It supports the relationship like a foundation supports a house. And, if we think about a foundation of a house, it's made up of beams that hold up the house. And so, similarly, the foundation of a relationship is made up of pillars that hold up the relationship. And those are honesty, trust, communication, teamwork, and respect. So, those pillars need to be there in order for you to enter into a successful relationship. And those pillars need to constantly be worked at over the course of the relationship, over the lifetime of the relationship. Because, whereas like fundamental values and all these other F words, they kind of need to be there in order for you to enter into the relationship, and those aren't really changeable. But foundation is sort of fluid, because if, you might have respect, you might have honesty and trust and all of those things. But if you do something, you can break those pillars down. So you need
Okay.
to reinforce those pillars. Um, Fixing is this notion that Nobody is going to fix somebody else. So we don't enter into a relationship or especially a marriage trying to fix our partner. Our partner's not a project. Our partner is a whole person, and it's up to that person to work on their issues. And if they choose not to, and those issues are a problem, you are not going to change them. You're not going to be the one to suddenly swoop in and fix them. It's not going to happen. And also, fixing is a two-parter. You also need to enter into a relationship in a healthy way. So if there's something that you need to fix within yourself, something you need to work on within yourself, then you need to address that before you can get into a healthy relationship in a healthy way. Because if you enter it to an in an unhealthy way, you're going to seek an unhealthy relationship and consequently end up in an unhealthy relationship. So you need to be, it doesn't mean that you don't still have past experiences or traumas or scars or wounds or any of these things. We all do, but you can't let the trauma or the past experience or the scar or the wound pick your partner for you. You need to address those things so that you are the one picking your partner. um Fairy tale is this notion that we idealize, overly idealize and romanticize relationships, and that leaves us very disappointed because it's not indicative of reality. So we view relationships as like, oh, the wedding day is the most important day of our lives. I just need someone to propose to me. I just need to get married. And that's not going to set you up for a happy life, because you're not picking your partner because this is the best teammate and the best partner and you share fundamental values and you have a solid foundation. You're picking a partner because you want to get to the wedding day. And there's a lot of time after the wedding day. It's like the wedding day is really just the beginning. It's not the end, and they lived happily ever after. So it's, kind of, we need to disabuse ourselves of this notion that, either our wedding is the most important day of our lives, or the proposal is the most magical moment of our lives, because these can all be good things and exciting things, but they don't dictate how well we're going to navigate life with somebody and what type of partnership we're going to have, because a relationship is a partnership. um Family, I think I touched on all of them except for family. So family is, oh, fear, I didn't get to fear. I'll get to fear. So family is kind of also a multifaceted one. So family is important because a person's family can really clue you in to a lot about a person. So if somebody's close to their family, then you need to make sure you get along with their family, and their family needs to make sure that they get along with your partner. And everybody needs to get along, because if they don't, there are going to be a lot of problems that come up, and you're going to feel torn between your partner and your family. And there are obviously toxic families, but then there are also families who really care about you and want what's best for you. And if your family doesn't like your partner, it's not that your family is horrible. It might mean that there's something your family sees, because your family wants what's best for you, that you may not see because you're blinded by love or your fear or whatever it is. So, listen to your family, and observe the interaction between your partner and your family if you're close to your family. If you're not close to your family, or your partner's not close to his or her family, that's also a clue. Why? Is that affecting your partner? Is your partner, like, does your partner have an issue with his or her mother, like mommy issues? And is your partner selecting someone to fill that void? Are you stepping into the role of mommy now because your partner doesn't speak to his or her mom? So um family is like just kind of a missing, it's like another puzzle piece that gives you kind of a sense of the big picture that you should really be looking at for whatever the dynamic is there. And then fear is the last one, which is, I think, the number one reason that relationships fail is people enter into them because they're afraid. For whatever reason, they're afraid that they might not find someone better, or they're getting older and time is running out. And so, well, this person's good enough, I'll settle. Or, they talk themselves into it, because the thought of going back out there and doing dating apps and going back into that horrible dating world is just so awful that, like, okay, I'll convince myself to stay in this relationship because I'm afraid that if I go back out there, I have to deal with that ickiness again. You know, um, or there's self-esteem issues, like, I'm not good enough. Oh, well, this person loves me, nobody else is going to love me, so this is good enough. So fear manifests itself in many ways, but it talks us out of leaving when our intuition is screaming at us and telling us to stay. I mean, to leave, right, to get out, right.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think you're spot on. You are absolutely spot on. And most of the things you've touched on were actually hitting the right notes. Just because of stories I've heard and because of personal experiences as well. It just makes sense, everything you've just said. So I'm not going to muddy it up. I believe that anybody who hears this will be able to pick up their own advice and their own clues out of it from what you've said. That's brilliantly said. In your experience, what's the number one reason couples stay in the wrong relationships?
Fear. Yeah.
Fear.
Yeah. Because, even if they're already in a relationship, like, even like, for example, a woman who's in an abusive relationship, and let's say she's a stay-at-home mom and her husband's in charge of all the finances. Even then, she knows she wants to leave, or but she's ultimately afraid, because
Yeah.
if she leaves, she might not be able to support herself or her children. And that's valid.
Yeah.
I don't fault her for that. But that's fear, right? Fear of the unknown, fear, because we don't, as humans, we like certainty. We don't like uncertainty. We gravitate towards certainty. So being in the relationship that we know, at least that is certain. And we almost would rather have that certainty, even if it's bad certainty, than the potential of good uncertainty, because we don't know what that good holds for us.
Wow. Many people settle out of fear or comfort. How can someone recognize when they are settling and what steps should they take?
Well, again, you have to be very, very self aware. And so when fear is sitting here, and this is how I think about fear. So fear is one of those things that has protected us our whole life. Fear tells you in the moment, says, don't touch a hot stove because you're going to burn yourself, right? Fear tells you, oh, you can't swim, don't jump in that pool, you'll drown. And fear is correct. And it's
Yeah.
kept us safe and it's protected us. So we've learned to trust it. It's over time and time and time again, fear has positively reinforced how trustworthy it is to us. So we trust it, we believe it. And so, but fear protects us in the moment. It doesn't protect us, 20 years down the road, because obviously if I touch a hot stove now, that is not going to affect me 20 years down the road. I'll have a burn, I'll heal in 7 days, and I'll be fine 20 years from now. I probably won't even remember that. So, fear doesn't care about the future us. It only cares about the us of right now.
Yeah.
Our intuition doesn't necessarily care about the us of right now so much as it does want to protect the us of the future. But because fear is so comforting and so trustworthy, and because the future is not palpable to us, it's not tangible, we can't put ourselves 20 years down the road and understand exactly how we're going to feel. If we don't have children, we don't know what that's like. Right. So it's easier to give in to something that we know right now that we're experiencing in the moment than to think about the future. But our intuition is loud and it's usually right. Because I can't tell you the number of people who come into my office and they say, I saw the red flags. I saw this. I saw that. I just didn't listen. And why? Because fear was telling them, if you break up with this person, you're going to be alone. If you break up with this person, you might not find something better. If you break up with this person, you're not going to be able to have children because you're getting older and, you only have so much time, right? Whatever the reasons and so we listen to fear. But we have to remind ourselves that fear is just protecting the moment, the momentary us, the right now. It's not looking for the next 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. That's so much longer than this instant moment where we're going to be uncomfortable or feel sadness or pain, but it's temporary and it will pass. But the pain of a divorce and the financial ruin of a divorce and the impact it has on your unborn children that you can't even fathom right now is way worse than anything you're going to experience in this moment. So it's kind of like a form of delayed gratification. We have to think about our future selves kind of like a savings plan, or a retirement account. It's like we have to really trust our gut to us, and we just shush it because fear is more reliable in the moment.
Well, there are two questions I want to ask you. One, I want to create a real case scenario here. And this other one, I'll come back to the real case scenario. I hope I remember. But I've seen a lot of things being said, like if you're in a bad relationship or a bad marriage and you think you have to move because it's affecting you negatively and you don't. If you have a daughter or a son at home, they are learning from what you're going through. So
Yes.
then when they get married and they are being treated badly, they don't leave because they think it's the right thing to do. And I think for some reason they might be true. That might be true because growing up, you see that, like you said, for me, I hardly saw my parents quarrel. And even when they did, they patched up quickly. But then my aunties will say, oh, your mom didn't leave, so we wouldn't leave. But my mom's case may not be yours. If yours is toxic,
Yeah.
you have to, if you think you have to leave. But they're not leaving because their bigger sister stayed and was okay throughout the marriage, and divorce is not accepted in the family. Some of these things prevent us from taking that bold decision and thinking of us first, especially when we've always put, now this is why I'm bringing the case scenarios, when we've always put other people before us. We've put our partners before us. We've put the children before us. Oh, because of the children, I'll not leave.
Yes.
Forgetting about us, our mental health and everything else. And especially when you see that there's a lot that has gone on in the relationship. The partner is not changing. He doesn't seem to want to change. His communication doesn't seem he's doing anything about it. It's either you take it or leave it. This is who I am. That kind of thing. And is not ready to make amends and make things work.
Yeah.
And you, on the other hand, feel this is not good for me. It's not getting any better. It's getting worse by the day. Is okay today, is bad the next 4 days. So it's all right for one day, the next 4 days is bad. So most of the time it's bad. In very few cases, it's good.
Yeah.
And we've just talked about fear. Somebody who is thinking of, like you said, a real case scenario, they don't know what's out there. What are people going to say? What is the family going to say? Nobody has ever divorced in this family. Why is it going to be you doing it for the first time? What can this person do? Because everybody's case is different. If they went through it and didn't leave, it doesn't mean it's working for you. What can this person do if they want to leave?
Well, I mean, that's you hit the nail on the head. Every case is different. And so, if somebody wants to leave, they have that prerogative. And I don't think that anybody should, really place what somebody else thinks over their own needs. If it's like, oh, the community frowns on it, well, that doesn't mean that you should live the rest of your life miserably. I think that most people tend to get over things as time passes. Like, they might be disappointed, or you might be the center of some gossip, right? Right off the bat. But ultimately, they'll move on, and they'll move on to the next gossip. Whenever that happens. So I think you really have to do whatever's right for you and take care of yourself. And on an airplane, they say put on your own mask first, and then put on your child's. And that's because you cannot help anyone else. You cannot help your child unless you're helping yourself first and taking care of yourself. Like, if you're, incapacitated or mentally drained or whatever it is, you can't be the best version of yourself, not just for you, but for everyone else around you who needs you. So, it's really, I can't tell people what to do. It's an individual decision and choice. And, but don't do something or not do something because you care what other people will think, because they'll get over it. And if they don't, then you don't need those people in your life.
Exactly. You highlight how relationships impact children's mental health and emotional well-being. What do you wish more what do you wish more parents understood about this?
Yeah, that's a real tough one. So, there are a lot of studies out there that show that parents who are divorced but co-parent amicably and the children see them getting along, that those children go on to thrive. So it's not the divorce that actually harms the children. However, there are a lot of studies out there that show that parents whose children children whose parents have a really acrimonious divorce, they're constantly fighting, they're putting the child in the middle, that those children in their teen years go on to have higher rates of depression, anxiety, suicidal ideations, teen pregnancy, promiscuous behavior, all of these things that we don't really want for our children. And it's because it's kind of like, I tell people, like, you have a choice. Do
Yeah.
you hate your ex more, or do you love your child more? Which is it? And if you love your child more, then you need to get along with your ex for your child. But if you hate your ex more than you love your child, then sure, go ahead and fight, because that's not good for your child. Even if you think you're doing what's best for your child, because you're actually fighting over your child, right? And this is easier said than done, because one person might want to be amicable and co-parent and get along, and the other won't. So it's, I can sit here very easily and say, do this, and it's not always realistic and feasible, but that's the ideal.
Dating today can feel overwhelming. What are three practical tips you would give to somebody searching for a meaningful, lasting relationship?
Definitely make sure that you and your partner share fundamental values, and the big kind of overarching takeaway from that is, you first need to know your own fundamental values. So in my book, there are some exercises that I give people, so that to help them identify what their own fundamental values are. And you can't know whether your partner shares them unless you know what your own fundamental values are first, right? So define your fundamental values, and then look for a partner who shares those. Okay. And then dating, yeah, it's great. It should be flirtatious. There should be chemistry. It should be fun. But you should be using dating as a job interview. So that's number two, tip number two. Dating is a job interview. And in the book, there's also an exercise where I have, once you've identified your fundamental values, list about 5 of them, and then list a bunch of questions that you can ask to find out about whether your date shares this fundamental value. And it doesn't mean you walk into your dates, with a clipboard and you just ask this list of questions. But as the conversation progresses, you definitely want to be sprinkling some questions into the conversation, or taking the conversation in a direction where you can ask these questions or similar questions, so you can find out whether your date shares these fundamental values. Conduct a job interview. This is your time to find out what your date's relationship is to his or her family. How do they interact with it? Tell me about the family. Are you close to your sister? Are you close to your parents? Where do your parents live? Little clues. Again, then we're getting into family, right? So we know fundamental values. We're learning about family. We're learning about a lot of things here. And we need to use dating as an opportunity to learn these things. If we're not, and we're just there because, oh my God, this person is so good looking and we're having such a good conversation, and oh, this person loves long walks on the beach. Like, great, who doesn't, right? So you need to be looking for the glue that's going to hold this relationship together. And then number 3 is, if you're not seeing all of these things, like, okay, we're on the third date. Let's say one person is deeply religious, a devout Catholic, and the other person is completely agnostic or an atheist, and it's important to the person who's a devout Catholic that the other person share that faith and the belief system, because they want to raise their children to be devout. Okay, so why are you still going on a fourth or fifth or sixth date if you've established that this person does not share that fundamental value? We need to know when to end it, and the longer we stay in it, if we have, if we get intimate with somebody, we're more attached. And the longer we go, the harder it is to get out, even when we know we need to. So it's okay, even if you think, I'm never going to find anyone else this great because we have such great conversation. It doesn't matter how great the conversation is, doesn't matter how attractive someone else is. End it sooner than later, because otherwise you're stuck and it's way harder down the road. And you're also, doing this person a favor. If you really like this person's a good person, it's not right for you, do them a favor and let them go too, so they can continue on their dating journey. You're not right for them either if your fundamental values don't align. Let them go. Don't put them through the heartbreak, 6 months down the road. 3 dates in, it's like, oh, okay, that's a bummer. But 6 months in, it's like, that was a real tough one. That hurts. A year down the road, oof, that's a heartbreak. So know when to end it.
Wow. Know when to end it. Your career blends law, writing, and even yoga instruction. How does these worlds come together in your philosophy of love and relationship?
Well, I think that the product is Live, Laugh, Find True Love, my book. It's it's the convergence of all these things. I'm writing, I'm implementing my, practice and experience of law, but also, I blend in a lot of the yoga philosophy and the teaching, and that whole holistic approach that I take about looking at the whole person and caring about people and making sure that they don't have to go through this really painful and difficult process.
If someone is listening, if someone listening is questioning whether they are right in the relationship, they are right in that relationship, what reflective questions can they ask themselves today? So basically, how can we find out if you're in the right relationship?
Well, I think it goes back to those 6 F words. Do my partner and I share fundamental values? And if so, what are they? Identify them. Don't just say, oh, yeah, we do. I think we do. Identify, well, what are your fundamental values and what do you think your partner's fundamental values are? Um, Look at their family, and then ask yourself and answer yourself honestly. Am I staying in this relationship out of fear, or do I really feel like we share fundamental values and all these, F words are intact? Um, do we have a solid foundation to this relationship? Do we communicate effectively? Do we listen to each other and hear? Are we respectful of one another? Do we respect each other? And is our communication respectful? Do we trust each other? Are we honest with each other? Are we a team? Are we on the same level? Do we work together to resolve problems, or do we become enemies in the face of a dragon breathing fire on us? Like, are we both standing there with our shields and together trying to fight the dragon? Or are we busy fighting each other so that the dragon ends up burning each of us because we're not, we're not working together to solve the problem? So I think really working these F words, they're like a really good framework and structure, um, that are a great, a great pathway forward.
Well, I've really learned a lot from you today. And I think, like I said earlier on, that most of the points that you have mentioned or talked about today went straight home for me.
Good.
It emphasizes some of the things I've been thinking about in my head and a lot more. So I believe that anybody who jumps or chances on today's podcast will be taking away a thing or two, if not more, along with them. Is there anything we've not touched on today that you would want us to talk about before we wrap
I
up?
don't think so. I think we covered it.
Great. So I would like to say a massive thank you, Sarah, for coming on podcast with Sheila today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. If you've been listening in, this is season 2, episode 137 of our podcast series, where we bring seasoned guests with inspiring life stories and experiences to share with us. Don't miss out on all these lovely experiences. Subscribe and be notified when a new episode is released. Whilst at it, please take a moment to drop us a rating. Our prayer for you this week is that you'll become an advocate and a lover of peace. Remember, change begins with you. Until we meet again, have a brilliant day. Bye.